It was late spring in Portland, Oregon, when the story I am about to tell truly began. At that time, I had just moved into a small but charming neighborhood with my husband, Daniel, and our young daughter, Emily. We were still learning the rhythms of our new community, still trying to figure out who our neighbors were, and still balancing the hectic pace of work and family. Among all the houses on our quiet street, one always stood out, the little yellow house across from us, where a man named Michael Harper lived. He was around our age, perhaps mid-30s, tall with dark hair, and he had a quiet but magnetic presence. He wasn't married, and although he mostly kept to himself, everyone in the neighborhood seemed to know him in one way or another. For me, Michael was just another neighbor. Or at least, he was supposed to be. A window across the street. One evening, while I was helping Emily with her homework, I noticed Daniel sitting near the living room window. He seemed oddly focused, peering outside with a look I couldn't quite read. "What are you looking at?" I asked. He chuckled nervously. "Nothing, really. Just the neighbor across the street. He's interesting." I followed his gaze, and sure enough, Michael was in his front yard, watering his plants. Something about the scene was oddly intimate, not because of what he was doing, but because of how quietly he carried himself, like he lived in a world entirely his own. Over the next few days, Daniel and I found ourselves unintentionally watching Michael through the window more often than we should have. It wasn't in a malicious way, but rather with a kind of quiet curiosity. He was different from the other neighbors. While families bustled around, kids played on bikes, and cars came and went, Michael seemed content in his solitude. "Do you think he's lonely?" Daniel asked one night. "Maybe," I replied. "Or maybe he just likes being by himself." But there was something about him that drew us in. Without meaning to, we became quiet observers of his daily life, when he left for work, when he returned, when he read on his porch late into the evening. It was almost like watching a character in a movie play out scenes we could never quite predict. The night he noticed. It was a Thursday evening when everything changed. Rain had just started to fall, tapping softly against the windows. Daniel and I were sitting in the living room when we realized Michael was in his kitchen across the street, cooking dinner. The warm glow of his lights contrasted beautifully against the rainy night. "I wonder what he's making," Daniel said, smiling. "Looks like pasta," I whispered. And then it happened. Michael looked up, directly toward our house. His eyes met ours through the rain-streaked glass, and in that moment, we froze. "Oh no," Daniel muttered. He saw us. My heart pounded. We hadn't meant to intrude, but how could we possibly explain ourselves? Michael tilted his head slightly, as though trying to understand what we were doing. And then, he smiled. It wasn't mocking or angry. Just a simple, knowing smile, as though he had finally caught the people who had been silently watching him. An unexpected knock. The next day, there was a knock at our door. When I opened it, Michael was standing there, holding a plate of freshly baked cookies. "Hi," he said warmly. "I thought I'd bring these over." I realized, we haven't really introduced ourselves properly. I hesitated, cheeks burning with embarrassment, but Daniel quickly jumped in. Come in, come in." As Michael stepped inside, the tension I felt slowly melted. He wasn't upset. In fact, he seemed amused. Over coffee and cookies, he laughed gently and said, "You know, I think I caught you both staring at me the other night." Daniel nearly choked on his coffee. "We weren't. I mean, it's not what it looked like." Michael raised an eyebrow, still smiling. "Don't worry, I didn't take it the wrong way. Honestly, it's kind of flattering. Most days I feel invisible around here." Something about his honesty struck me. For someone who seemed so mysterious, Michael was surprisingly open. A friendship grows. From that day on, things shifted. We no longer just watched Michael from afar, he became part of our lives. He joined us for dinners, helped Daniel fix the fence in our backyard, and even taught Emily how to ride her bike without training wheels. The more time we spent with him, the more I realized how much depth he carried beneath his quiet surface. He had moved to Portland after a painful divorce, leaving behind a life in Chicago. His solitude wasn't out of arrogance, but out of healing. He was learning how to piece his life back together, one quiet evening at a time. Daniel admired him for his resilience. I admired him for his kindness. And together, we grew close, maybe too close. The rumors begin. Small neighborhoods have long memories and sharp tongues. It didn't take long before whispers began. Have you noticed how much time she spends with Michael? I overheard one neighbor mutter to another at the grocery store. I tried to ignore it, but the gossip spread quickly. People saw the dinners, the laughs, the long conversations on the porch. They didn't see the boundaries we carefully kept, the respect we had for Daniel and my marriage. But rumors have a way of planting seeds, and soon even Daniel began to feel their sting. One night, he sat me down and said, "Do you think we've let this go too far?" I looked at him, startled. "What do you mean?" He hesitated. "I trust you. I really do. But people are talking. They say it looks like something else." The pain in his voice broke me. The last thing I ever wanted was for Daniel to doubt my love for him. A neighbor's confrontation. The situation reached its peak one summer evening. Michael was helping me carry groceries inside when our neighbor, Mrs. Reynolds, stopped at the end of the driveway. "You know," she said sharply, "people are beginning to wonder about the kind of friendship you two have." I froze, groceries in hand, feeling the weight of her accusation. Michael, however, stayed calm. "With all due respect," he said gently, "what goes on between friends isn't for gossip. We've done nothing wrong, but the damage had been done. Choosing love. That night, Daniel and I had one of the hardest conversations of our marriage. "Do you want me to stop seeing him?" I asked quietly. Daniel's eyes softened. "No, because I know you. I know your heart. But maybe we should create some space, just for us. To remind ourselves what matters most." Tears filled my eyes. "What matters most is you. Always." From that day, our focus shifted. We didn't cut Michael out completely, but we made sure our marriage came first. More date nights, more honest talks, more intentional time together. And slowly, the rumors died down. Michael's goodbye. A year later, Michael decided to move back to Chicago. He said he was finally ready to face his past and rebuild his future. On his last night in Portland, we stood together on our porch, watching the sun set over the quiet street. "Thank you," he said softly, "for reminding me that people can still care without expecting anything in return." I smiled. "And thank you for reminding us how precious love really is." When he drove away the next morning, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. A love renewed. In the years that followed, Daniel and I often thought back to that unusual chapter of our lives. What began with curiosity through a window had turned into a lesson in love, trust, and resilience. We learned that marriage isn't just about protecting love from the outside world, but also about nurturing it within. We learned that true friendship can exist even in the face of rumors. And above all, we learned that sometimes, the people who walk into our lives for a short time can leave the deepest marks. Even now, whenever it rains against the windows, I think of that night, the night Michael caught us watching. And I smile, knowing that from that small moment of embarrassment grew a story that would change us forever.